Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. And as always, I'm your host, the Game Master. And today's video was inspired by John Carpenter's The Thing from 1982, as well as the 1951 version of The Thing, also known as The Thing from Another World, as well as the Martian characters from DC Comics, like the Martian Manhunter and his enemies, the White Martians. But before we get into all of that, make sure you smash that like button. Check to see if you're still subscribed because YouTube does love to unsubscribe people and actually did recently. Ring the bell so you know when I upload more stuff. And as always, be sure to leave us a comment because that really helps us out with the YouTube algorithm. We've got a great community here, and it's all thanks to you guys. Thank you so much for being here. With all that said, let's dive in. The prologue to this one takes place on June 30th of 1908 near the Tunguska River in what would one day be the USSR. A 50 megaton blast takes place, and the locals don't know what hit them. All of them are disintegrated except for one young woman who would go on to be Russia's answer to Dr. Manhattan, one of the most powerful Soviet citizens who ever lived. With her super intelligence, the Soviets put her to good use during World War II, designing weapons and equipment for them, as well as sending her to assassinate key German superhumans. After the war, the Soviets established Kapustin Yar, which officially is a Russian rocket launch complex, but off the books, Kapustin Yar is the USSR's answer to Area 51. Dr. Tunguska is sent there to reverse engineer all the super science that the Germans got from the Decepticons, the Vril, etc. Which brings us to the main plot of today's game, which takes place on November 1st, 1951. A spacecraft from Mars crash lands at the North Pole, and in the city of Murmansk, Captain Vadik Kevya is summoned to the office of his Soviet superiors, who tell him that they received word from Dr. Kapnitho that an unusual aircraft crashed up north. They order Vadik to take a team to investigate. So Captain Vadik flies there and lands his ski plane on the ice where a Soviet research station is located. The research station is comprised of several buildings which are low to the ground and half buried in snowdrifts. What bits of the buildings are visible are lined with huge icicles. As soon as Vadik enters the complex, he finds a dark-haired woman named Xenia Sheridona. A few months earlier, they got drunk and spent the night together. He wanted her to be in a relationship with him, but instead she returned here, working under Dr. Kapnitho. After briefly talking with her about his feelings for her, Xenia says there's no time for love. Instead, she takes him to Dr. Kapnitho, who shows Vadik some photographs they took, the unidentified falling object. The photos show it moving sideways, then up a little, before finally it hit the ice. Kapnitho says a meteorite may sometimes appear to move parallel with the horizon, but they never go up, which rattles Vadik somewhat. Then Kapnitho tells him that they estimate that the object weighs 20,000 tons, and that really blows his mind. Vadik asks where the object is now, and they say it's about 50 miles from here. So they refuel the ski plane and bring the scientists to the crash site. As they get close, their Geiger counters go off, which helps them navigate, since the North Pole's magnetic properties interfere with their compass and their ability to get around. The sled dogs begin to whine, and they sense that something is off about all of this. So they land the plane, and a dozen men head out into the bitter cold. They get to the spot where a massive saucer came down hot, melted the ice, sank. Then, as the saucer cooled down and the flames were extinguished, the extreme cold refroze the ice again. So while they can see the round, snowless patch of ice the saucer sank under, they can't actually see the saucer itself. A man named Edic Scote takes pictures to send back to Stalin. Then the Soviets use thermite to burn away some of the ice. But when the thermite reaches the ship, something ignites and there's an unexpected explosion. The men are knocked off their feet as a huge black cloud rises into the air. They search the area and find the body of a white Martian. They load it onto the plane and take what they assume is a corpse back to the research station just before a bad storm moves in. The scientists want to perform an autopsy, but the military personnel don't allow them to until they are ordered to do so. The scientists talk about their duty to humanity, and the military says it's their duty to shoot them if they disobey. So for now, the supposed corpse is left here. The scientists then argue amongst themselves. Some insist that they should dissect it, while others say it may have germs that would end humanity. As for the military, they try to radio Moscow, but this storm is just causing too much interference. Vadik tells the radio operator to send a message stating they won't examine the body until ordered. So the communications officer tries to send word, but who knows if the message made it or not. As the storm hits, everyone hunkers down and waits. They smoke cigarettes and drink black coffee and vodka as the lights flicker off and on. Xenia asks Vadik what's going on. The Martian terrifies her. Vadik comforts her, and one thing leads to another. They end up in her quarters together when a man named Boris knocks on the door. He informs Vadik that Corporal Kynusha is losing his nerve. So Vadik leaves Xenia and relieves Corporal Kynusha of guard duty. Vadik orders Boris to guard the Martian. As Boris guards the body, it slowly begins to regenerate damage. Martians have a bizarre ability to grow a face on the palm of their hand, and the mouth there can eat whatever matter is available and transmute that into more Martian flesh. We actually saw this ability, by the way, in Martian Manhunter Volume 2, number 8, page 9. At any rate, so the White Martian does this, and as soon as he's regained enough hit points to be up and around, he attacks Boris. The Martian snaps the neck of Boris and then eats him with that mouth on his hand. Once it has digested the mass of Boris, it uses the split power. So now there are two Martians. And one of them uses the chameleon power to assume the appearance of Boris. The other Martian uses shape change to turn into a sled dog, which is a slow and painful process right now because the amount of fire damage that the Martian took when it crashed. Corporal Kynusha runs into the room halfway through this process and sees the monstrous Martian sled dog mid-transformation. Kynusha screams and the sled dog attacks him. Lieutenant Domp walks in with a cigarette and a bottle of hard alcohol. Since he's unarmed, he spits the alcohol at the Martian and uses the lighter to create an impromptu flamethrower. Luckily for him, Martians have a problem with fire, so this actually works. And when the others come running, they see that fire works. So everyone equips themselves with flamethrowers. The other Martian, who is disguised as Boris, is mistaken for the real Boris by the player characters, who assume the reason he was cowering in the corner was because of the Martian. In reality, the fake Boris was cowering because of the fire. So, quote unquote, Boris is welcomed back into the party and the sled dog is examined. Boris wants to avenge the destruction of his other half. So when he and Lieutenant Domp are alone, the Martian eats Domp, splits in two, and then one of him shapeshifts into Domp. As the GM, by the way, I would randomly hand people little notes during this game session. Only they knew what it said. Some of the notes would say things like, "I like your shoes," or "You're doing a good job, keep it up." While sometimes a note would tell someone that they were a Martian now and not to let their fellow gamers know it. So the party gets more and more paranoid, and one by one, humans are eaten and replaced by Martians until Captain Vatic and Xenia seem to be the only ones left. Vatic offers Xenia a cigarette and she turns it down. He realizes it's because if he lit it for her, her fear of fire would be revealed. So Vatic asks her what her name really is. The white Martian, pretending to be Xenia, hesitates, then admits that its real name is actually Nix. Vatic asks if Xenia is dead, and the Martian says it is psychic and it read her mind earlier. The Martian, known as Nix, says that it has Xenia's memories and thoughts, and that it basically is Xenia, only better now. It tells Vatic that he should just give in, and that when this is all said and done, he will be better too. Vatic is torn, not sure if this really is somehow Xenia, or if the Martian is just lying to keep him from attacking it with fire. The guy playing Vatic genuinely froze up and couldn't decide what to do. And in our game, we set a limit to how long it can be your turn until your turn is up. So eventually, Vatic runs out of time, refusing to attack what might be the woman he loves. And on Nick's turn, the Martian kills Vatic, eats him, and shapeshifts into Vatic. Once the storm lets up, the white Martians, known as Nix, radio the USSR. They say that the coast is clear and that they were forced to kill the monster when he regenerated and attacked them. They request a plane be sent to pick them up, since during the struggle, almost everything here was destroyed to prevent the Martians from making it back to civilization. Which brings us to the epilogue. The Soviet Union does send a ski plane. It lands, and the Martians approach it disguised as scientists and military personnel. But when the door of the plane opens, Dr. Tunguska floats out. She substitutes her 25 APs of omnipower for the detect power and uses it to detect Martian on the men standing before her. When the GM informs her that these are not, in fact, human beings, she does to them what Dr. Manhattan did to Rorschach at the end of Watchmen. The intrinsic fields that held the molecules of the white Martian men together are removed. So each Martian sifts apart, and there are no hands with little faces left to eat anything to try to regrow themselves with. Dr. Tunguska searches the base, gathers relevant evidence, then leaves for Moscow. All the while, a certain superintelligent sled dog watches her from afar, pretending to be an ordinary Earth animal. And that was it for this game session. We really liked this one. Hopefully you did too. If so, smash that like button. Make sure you're still subscribed. Ring the bell for notifications. And as always, leave us a comment because that really helps us out on our end. From all of us here at the longest running superhero RPG on Earth, we hope that you have a good one, and we will see you in the next adventure. Bye.